Hi everyone, I'm Sybille Muschik, and we're out here in the rural area, not too far from where I live. We have a creek close by, and that's why we have all the birches. You can see the birches and poplars, and it's relatively quiet at the moment, not too much traffic on the road. And we're just starting to get some of the deep shadows. Night is falling. It's relatively quiet, a little mysterious, and it's actually quite pleasant. I'm dressed warmly, as you can see, lots of coverings and hats and scarves and gloves on. It's about -1, I think, not too cold for this time of year. And it's lovely. The air is crisp and wonderful. I think we're going to have a logging truck come by, talking about quiet. So I'm hoping to paint some night scenes. And I don't know if it'll be birches or weeds. We'll cross that road when we come to it. And right at the moment we've got the truck in the background. I was hoping that we'd maybe hear a wolf or an owl. That happens around here. We have foxes that howl at night.
There was a duck just a moment ago.
What's that?
There was a duck just a moment ago.
There was a duck, right.
That's all we got.
Yeah, the creek is still open, so there's the occasional duck quacking, a few little bird noises. So we'll see what transpires. Hi everyone, welcome to my Shoreline Studio. It's a brand new year and hopefully this one will be so much better. We're starting off with a night scene, and I want to tell you a little story about what happened with this. To all intents and purposes, we were supposed to do a night shoot, and it was supposed to be quiet and romantic and all those things that, you know, night scenes are. We ended up down by the creek where we wanted to shoot, and then we were starting to talk, and all of a sudden somebody was snowblowing his driveway. So we paused for a minute, and then we're just getting into it again, and along came a grader, and he went by us. That was fine, and then he turned around and came back and did it again. So, and that sort of ruined the moment and the time, so we packed up and went to our yard, and then we filmed in our yard. And it was quiet, thankfully, and the mood was perfect. And just before we started, we could hear howling across the lake, and it was quite eerie, and I'm sure it was a coyote, or it wasn't a wolf, it was something smaller, maybe a fox or a coyote. So that did set the mood for us. So I wanted to show you some of the night scene that we took. This is our willow tree that's at the lake, and we severely trimmed it this past summer, so it looks a little barren. So but it's great on structures, so that's great for making a stencil. And of course, you wanted to have it a little bit more exciting, so this is one of our resident deer, and it's a little buck that comes through once in a while, and I guess he's getting a lot bigger now. So I cut a stencil, and here's, maybe I'll put a piece of white paper behind it so you can see the stencil, and that's what we'll be working with. And this is on Yupo paper, which isn't a paper at all, it's actually plastic. This is what it looks like, and you can I don't know how well you can see it, but it's a very plasticized paper. You can do watercolor on it and multimedia. With watercolor, it's quite nice because you can actually lift it right back to the white. So, but watercolors often don't like this kind of paper. The first deer I did, I used Tyvek. Tyvek is often used, whoops, my deer is running away. This was the deer I cut from Tyvek, and I've used it in some of the pieces that we'll be showing in the video later. And this is, it's used as an outer covering after you put gyprock on and so forth. That's right, Josh, isn't it?
Plywood. On the outside of it.
Tyvek. On the outside? Mm-hmm. Yes, right. So it's the final before you put siding on, right? Yeah. Okay, so, but this smooth Tyvek, there's other kinds that have more texture, but the smooth Tyvek works great for things like stencils. But I want it a little bit smoother. So actually I'm going to show you today how to cut a stencil just with ordinary tools. I know you can use the heating tools and you know, plug it in and so forth, and I've burned myself several times on one. So it's not my favorite tool. I'm used to cutting with just a little X-Acto knife or something like that. So anyway, let's go to the plate and we'll show you how to do that, and then we'll get on to some gel plate printing. So I've already cut out a piece of the Yupo paper. This is the Yupo paper here, so we'll just remove that. And we'll work on our little deer. I've redrawn it much smaller size to fit the format we're going to be using. So I have just a benchmark knife, and I'm just going to start cutting. Hopefully I will do a good job so that we have a nice negative as well. And as I cut, I'm going to turn my paper. The nice part about cutting like this is it's spontaneous, and whatever wobbles you have in there create character, as long as you're not overcutting or cutting off a leg or something like that. So there we go, we've got, that's cutting pretty good. And this side. I started with the legs in case I messed those up, and then we'd have to start all over again, but so far so good. You want to be fairly precise because we're going to work towards having a stencil, which is the negative shape of the deer. Here's his little start of one of his horns. I eliminated the other one because it's just too confusing for the stencil. But we will do the ears. Takes a bit of a steady hand, but I'm used to this kind of thing. It's a little bit like drawing, where you do your drawing and you don't go back and forth over the line. You do a nice, clear drawing line. Now, since this deer is walking in the snow, very likely I'll be placing it in such a way that you won't see the hooves, maybe this one. So this one's pretty important. Some people have machines that will do the cutting for you. I'm sort of a low-tech person. I don't have a lot of fancy equipment. And at this stage of my life, I probably won't be investing in it. Maybe if somebody gives it to me as a gift, and you know, like one of those big shop machines or something like that, that would be fine. In graphic design school, well, we did everything by hand, including the type. We were just starting into computers at the time. We worked with a little Mac Plus. And it was always crashing, and you had to remember to save.
That still applies today.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember sleeping on the floor waiting for my turn for the Mac to at 2 o'clock in the morning when everybody was trying to get their projects ready. And if somebody was mean, they wouldn't wake you up. You'd miss your turn. If you have a really good sharp knife, which these are, this is easy. And I always start by breaking off a blade so you've got a fresh blade. Don't try and skimp on that kind of thing. It always hangs up in these tiny little areas. We haven't quite pressed deep enough. So don't get impatient. Just work your way through it gently. There. You can hear it when it cuts through. We've got one tiny hoof just giving us trouble. And there we are. So we have our stencil, and this would be the mask. So now that wasn't that hard, was it? Hi everyone. Here we are on the shoreline of Bushy Lake. It's a gorgeous evening. A few seconds ago we were just listening to a coyote or a wolf, maybe on the other side of the lake. It's pretty quiet right now. Most of the traffic has settled down, and we don't hear much usually out here anyway. So I'm looking at the snow, how crisp and sparkly it is, and all the tree shadows and the shapes of the trees. So I'm really looking forward to painting a snow scene. So I'm set up for our first print, and just take you through some of the tools quickly. My brayer, it's a speedball. This one's kind of neat because it just snaps out like this for cleaning. And then of course you got to get it back in again. A couple little brayers, they're also speedball, and they're the smaller rubber, they're soft rubber. My barren for, you know, rubbing the print to get it off. A variety of paints here, they're all golden open, Hansa yellow opaque, quinacridone nickel azul gold, alizarin crimson, quinacridone magenta. This is ultramarine blue, phthalo blue-green shade, manganese blue hue, phthalo green blue shade, diazazine purple, titanium white, and carbon black. Those are the colors I usually use. We have our little deer mascot, and we have our stencil. But the first thing we're going to do is just put a base tone on, and then we'll set the stencil on it. This is probably going to just take one layer for the first one. So we'll put out a variety of paints, and we're starting with the titanium white. for the base. Then I'm going to add a little bit of, this is Golden Open acrylic medium. I use that as much as I use the open thinner, which makes it last longer. Sometimes I use them in combination. It just depends. I might use them in titanium white is quite an opaque color, and it is also a little stiffer. So then we'll go to the lighter blue, which is the manganese blue, a nice transparent blue, which is how snow is. It's lovely and transparent in many cases, especially as it starts to ice up. Then to go into a deeper shade, a little bit of the phthalo blue, the green shade. I'll rescue the lid later. A little bit of ultramarine just to warm it up a tiny bit. Ultramarine has a bit of alizarin crimson in it. And so it's a little bit closer to violet. We might just add a touch of the quinacridone magenta. As we're going into the distance, it's usually a little more violet too. So, and that looks to be a bit much, so we're just going to take some of that off. Okay, that's good. Now we'll start rolling it out. Now, the paint doesn't mix so easily, so you have to watch out that you don't have what I call globs. It should roll out nice and smooth. If it doesn't, you can go sort of in circular motion. There you go. And it gives a little character to the snow as well. So we're just hoping for a nice, smooth kind of transition, going from dark to light. The snow at where the light is. When we were at the tree in the front, we actually had a light that we put on. Night shooting is a bit of a problem with the camera, so having extra lighting is good. Okay, making sure that's all nice and smooth. Burying it off. Maybe taking a little bit more off the bottom. Okay, so our first one is going to be just blocking out. Be careful you don't put it down first. You might have to rebrayer your... Okay. Now you can see my gel plate, which is 8 by 10 from the Jelly Arts people, has expanded a little bit. This is cut exactly to 8 by 10. Now then, so then what we're going to do is just a plain basic print. So this should be the background blue. You'll see that this will block out and become mostly black with some lines in there. So that'll be our first print. Okay. We'll see how this one prints. And that's pretty basic, right? So, okay, so we have a nice atmosphere. Now we're going to lift the stencil off. And it's a little bit dendritic, which means the paint is sort of separated, almost like hoarfrost, which is kind of interesting. So we'll print that as well. My Baren is good because it gives me the pressure that I need to really... This is not pastel paper exactly, but it's very close, so it has a bit of a surface. Pastel paper for printmaking has a little bit too much grain for my taste, so I tend not to use it. Okay, so we're getting a bit of the snow, so it's very moody and atmospheric. I'd like to lighten that up a little bit, so I'm just going to add the white. And again, we'll remove the stencil after we put it down. Oops. My tape isn't sticking that well. Put our stencil down again. And I just have to see where I put it last time, so. Might get a shadow effect, which could be quite interesting. Okay, not bad. So that's our first print. So it's a bit of dendritic, a little tiny bit of a shadow. It's where it slipped a little bit, but I think that's pretty dramatic. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is a ghost print. So I have here my Oriental rice paper. It's not really rice paper at all, it's mulberry paper, but that's what people think it is. And it's for Sumi and Oriental painting, but it's also good for printmaking. So what we're going to do is take a ghost print with this paper. You can see how transparent it is. We'll just get rid of the rest of it here. And we're just going to place it. We don't need to register it because it's just one off. And, okay, where did I put the Baron? Oh, here it is. Disappeared on me. My garboonies are working overtime. Okay. Now this is the fog series, where things are in the fog. We've also taken, Josh has been out madly photographing the lake when the fog rolls in. It's been quite mild, so when the temperature dips to 0 or -1, we often get fog happening on the lake. So there it is in the fog. And we'll be showing these as usual at the end. When I cut the stencil, I put a little margin around it, about a ½ inch margin, and I can crop to there. And I could even crop off the margin if I want to, if it's messy, so it's all good. So let's be a little bit more adventurous with the colors. Let's go back to our magenta. And some manganese blue. And let's see here, we'll do our white. Maybe a little bit of purple at the top. Go really deep, and then trying to find my white here. That's where it is. And we'll make the white a little bit more bluish this time. Again, to swirl the paint so that there are no spots of color that are heavier, and that leaves blobs on the paper. Not good. And then we'll just make a nice graded tone. So that's not bad. Okay, our stencil. We still have the blue on the stencil. I think that will just add to everything. And place carefully. And this time we're going to add our deer. So where should we put it? Here or here? Let's put it here. And we're going to mess around with the painting a little bit, the stencil, by adding some branches. A few here and there. Just a little more texture. Like I said at the intro, we had trimmed these willows dramatically. And so they look a little barren. I know they'll fill out in the spring and have leaves all over the place again. We couldn't even get the canoe in without being overcome by willow leaves. And you couldn't beach the kayak or the canoe, so they had to go. But we can add them in. And we can add a little bit of texture to that. I'm just going to use maybe there's a few leaves here stuck to the tree, which actually is true. I'm going to just take one of the sheets of my rice paper, mulberry paper, and I'm just going to damp it on there slightly. It will lift some of the paint, but not that much. But it will really sit the stencil down. And it actually makes not a bad print doing that. And then we're going to lift off everything. And then we're going to print. We're going to print this on white. Now I think the deer is really outlined well, so, and the trees have color. Now we have maybe snowflakes rather than leaves in this case. But look at the outline on the deer. That's quite marvelous. Well, working on the print, it was all about the nighttime and a beautiful quiet evening. And so we filmed down by the creek. And then along came a grader, terribly noisy, and kind of ruined the spell of the moment. And he carried on down the road, and we thought we were, you know, through with it all, and then he came back and did it all over again. So I've decided to do a slight reversal, and we're going to go to blue paper, but we're going to do everything in black. So I'm not even going to bother taking off what's on the plate. It might make some interesting effects in the background. I'm going to add a little bit of the medium. Black as well, it's very opaque. This is lamp carbon black, so it is definitely a very rich black. I've got the light table on, so it looks more transparent than it actually is. Now, it's just going to be one layer, so we're not going to have to worry about registering it. Okay, so we're going to put our stencil down carefully. And our deer. Maybe we'll have the deer. Let me see here. I just have to figure out what we want to do. I think it's nicest in this area. Let's do it so that the deer is got one leg up. Well, actually, it looks like two legs up, but that's okay. Again, put lots of muscle into this kind of thing. Okay. And a very graphic image. So our deer is definitely visible, and the black is really intense. It's lovely. Okay, so that's our blue on black, and now the ghost print. Now I'm going to again take everything off. And the deer becomes black. There's some really interesting dendritic pieces in there. And this, I've got two sheets here. This is really beautiful paper to print on. There's two sides to it. There's a rough side and a smooth side. Right now I'm printing on the rough side so that the paint really bites in. But the smooth side might give you crisper edges, so it's up to you how you want to use it. So there you are. And I like what's happened. Some of these effects are really lovely. As usual, we'll be showing everything at the end. And for this last print, we're going to try some figures. Just ink it up again. Add a tiny bit of the thinner. Things are dropping off all over the place here. And this is going to give me trouble, so... Oh, I haven't opened it yet. Okay, so we'll just use the regular medium. I don't want to really lift a lot off. You want it quite intense, so... Just make sure, you know, there are no blobs. So we'll put our stencil back on. Now don't let it sag like I've been doing, so that it touches, it makes a mark. Keep it in good shape. Now that one it didn't really show the branches all that well, what we put in. So this time, give the branches more character. Having to cut them, of course, you can't make them as branch-like as they need to be. You don't want a lot of stuff happening going off, because it draws the eye out of the composition. So bigger limbs go more towards the center. So a few of these. And maybe just a spot. I'll end up looking blue. A few little interesting things. Okay, so figures are fairly easy to do. You want them just indications rather than so. We got a head. We got this sort of shape like a triangle. I'll make this a little person. Give him a hat. He's way off in the snow there, so. And maybe a coat. Okay, and a little companion here. Maybe they're holding hands, who knows? Maybe a story like Hansel and Gretel, something like that. I was going to add a dog, so we got to have a dog in here. Dogs are fairly easy. We just sort of give him his tail. Another limb. Head with a long nose. And pointy ears. There we go. There's our dog. Just scrape that out a bit more. Okay, we'll see how that prints. So that'll be black on blue, the trees will be blue, the snow will be blue. Well, our dog is a little obscure, but the figures are not too bad. There are a couple of little people there. So those are the kinds of things you can add into your basic stencil just to give it more interest. And of course you'll crop the sides, make it look nice. You can add more details to the figures, even more color with colored pencil or pastel. So there you are. Okay, so that's our session for today. Thanks so much for joining us here on our new year, and hopefully it'll be a better year for all of us, and we'll be able to get out and see our families and do a bit more travel. All the best of luck and good health in the new year. And we'll see you again here at Shoreline Studio, I hope, very soon. And take care and bye for now. And thanks so much for watching. So it's not the full moon, but it is very beautiful. And so it's very romantic. The light is gorgeous right now. The snow is glistening a little bit because of the light reflected. And we have farms in the area, and the lake is not too far away. We're getting a lot of traffic right now. It's people coming home from work. But everything is slowing down a little bit. It's a little bit quieter now. Not hearing any animals, but you never know what's lurking in the shadows.